Hello, Alamal. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mona Cottage Books. I'm Selby, and today I want to talk about some strange nonfiction books. All right, so I used to be a huge reader of nonfiction books. That's like all I ever wanted to read, especially as I was a kid. Now I don't read as many, but I've read some kind of strange ones, and I want to share them with you because maybe you'll find them interesting too. So first up on my list, I'm going to talk about Cheddar, A Journey to the Heart of America's Most Iconic Cheese by Gordon Edgar. So I read this one a little while ago, and it's literally all about cheddar cheese, and it's actually kind of fascinating. So it follows kind of like where it started. So cheddar is obviously from Cheddar, England, and it's what they call a farmhouse cheese. So like farm wives in the 16, 17, 1800s would make this cheese with leftover milk. And okay, this is a weird little tidbit that I remember, is he said that it was really hit or miss, and that sometimes, like if you didn't do the whole process correct, the cheddar cheese would explode. Like you'd pick it up and it would explode, and you could get really hurt by these like exploding wheels of cheddar cheese. So I had no idea. I think since then they've refined out the process a little bit more, and that doesn't happen, but that's very interesting. And so the whole book kind of chronicles like where cheese started and then how it became the cheese in America. Because if you're American or you've been to America, you know that like cheddar cheese is everywhere. That's like just the cheese that we always have. And then how it became like, I think why it was easily processed and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting book. If you like cheese and you're interested in like the history of cheese, then Cheddar. It's an interesting book. Next up, we have The Life of Pee. The story of how urine got everywhere. And I like this book. It was an interesting front cover. It was like medieval, it was like from a medieval manuscript, I think. I'll try to put it up. And people peeing. And you know, urine has actually been used in a lot of different things for a long time. Like it's a fertilizer. They also used to use it in cloth dyeing. Like you need the acid to use like woad, which was the blue before indigo was around. And yeah, so it wasn't a huge thick book, but it was an interesting little book. And yeah, I recommend it if you're curious about things like that. Another randomly slightly strange book I read was the Cider Revival Dispatches from the Orchard by Jason Wilson. Now I love hard cider. It is one of the few things that I miss. Living in the Netherlands, even though they have tons of apples, they're not cider people. And I do enjoy a good hard cider. And this book kind of really gives you a good overview of the history of cider and then kind of what's up and coming and trending today, or, you know, in the last 10 years or so. So it talks about cider, apples, the difference between like a dessert apple and a cider apple, which I also didn't realize that there are different apples, and then the heritage, and then like why cider became a big thing in the United States, and then why it declined, and then why it's coming back now. And then also kind of talks about different ciders made in other parts of the world. Like he talks about cider in Spain. And yeah, so if you're interested, if you like drinking cider and you're interested in the history of cider and then kind of like what people are doing with cider nowadays, it's a really interesting book. After that comes, this is one of my favorite ones because this is just one of the weirdest ones. A Time to Dance and Die, The Extraordinary Story of the Dancing Plague of 1518 by John Walker. So if you don't know the story, I guess it's 1518. There was like a village in Germany where a bunch of people just started dancing and they couldn't stop, or they didn't want to stop or something. They don't really know because it was a long time ago, and so there weren't like precise great records. But they basically, a bunch of them just danced themselves to death, and they called it the Dancing Plague. And this book gives you like the history of it and why it happened, and alludes to the fact that it happened in a couple other places at different times. And you get to learn about Saint Vitus and his red shoes and the symbolism if you see like old manuscripts with people with red shoes and stuff. So that was really interesting. Like I had no idea that this event happened, and that, yeah, just a strange tidbit of history. So those are 4 books that I have read, nonfiction books that I think are interesting, that maybe you would find interesting. Next up, I will talk about 4 books that I like to read. Okay, so here are 4 books that I haven't read yet, but I would totally read from the synopsis. 1, being a woman, I am curious about Flow, The Cultural Story of Menstruation by Elissa Stein. So as far as I know, this kind of gives you the history of how people viewed menstruation and periods and whatnot. And I find that could be very interesting. So another one is Hugh's Hedgehog, Obsession, Nostalgia, and a Very British Animal. So this is all about hedgehogs. And we don't have hedgehogs in North America, but I mean, other than like as pets. So the concept that hedgehogs just kind of live wild someplace is very fun to me. And this book is all about hedgehogs and like how I guess British people are really into hedgehogs. Anyway, another one is Salt, A World History by Mark Kurlansky. I know that salt is really important, that it has influenced history, trade routes. You need it to survive. You need at least a little bit of salt in your body. So having salt, people living on the coast who could get salt from the ocean would trade with people inland, and salt was really important for preserving. So it just talks about stuff like that, and I think that could be very interesting. You think, boring, salt, but then there's different types of salt and stuff, so could be. Another one is Under Glass, A Victorian Obsession. So this is all about how the Victorians liked to put things in jars and have display cabinets of weird things, and like why they like to do that. You know, I have no idea why. I know also the Victorians like ate a lot of mummies because they thought that it would work like aspirin. And so in the Victorian era, they took a lot of mummies from Egypt and ground them up and then would eat them. I don't know if that's in there, but that's just a fun little tidbit for you. Oh, so I said I had 4, but I actually have 5. There's also Food of the Cods, how fish and chips, how fish and chips made Britain. So that also sounds really fun. It's like history of this iconic food. You think of the UK, you think fish and chips. So I think it would be interesting about how it became the staple that it is today. So those are 5 fun and interesting nonfiction books that you might want to check out if you want to read something a little bit quirky, a little bit interesting. Most of these seem to be histories, so obviously I have a thing for histories. But if you like to get more quirky book recommendations, or you've got some of your own, leave them in the comments so that we can all share in quirky nonfiction books. And I will see you next time. Oh, like and subscribe if you would like more of this fun, silly book content.